ジョーの野郎。鬼姫が完全にぶっ潰しやがって。
Oh my god. Hello everyone, welcome to Joe Consumes Cinema. I'm your host, Violent Counter, and today we have Ashita no Joe, episode 13. So whatever Dangpei hit Joe with at the end of last episode, he didn't see it coming, and some type of counter. The counter right cross is what Rikishi got Joe with before when he knocked him out, and, something along those lines. Dangpei knows that, Joe's aggression can be used against him. A fighter that comes forward recklessly, like Joe does, it's kind of his style, is open to counters, and, he has to learn this lesson the hard way, I think. But yeah, there's a lot in the works and a lot to be really hopeful about for the future. Joe is finally, motivated to train boxing the right way. Now, granted, that motivation is revenge against Rikishi, but, there's time to develop a little bit more, nuanced and a more noble goal, shall we say, for Joe, in the future. And I think he will eventually get there. It's just, right now, he's still very immature, especially when it comes to this whole boxing thing, and it's going to take some time. Only other really interesting thing is we know now that Rikishi and Miss Shiraki, I was calling her Miss Shakira last episode, we learned that there's some history between the two, and, Rikishi apparently knows her grandfather and made a promise to him. We don't know what that involved just yet. And yeah, we have the beginnings of a real, I think, positive rivalry for Joe, that's going to go forward, well into the future. If you've ever seen Hajime no Ippo, this is probably, potentially on the same level as a Ippo and Miyata. Their relationship where they started off as rivals. They separated from gyms and, it keeps getting teased about an eventual fight between the two, but it just hasn't happened yet. So I think there's potential here for, a really long game story where, they have this initial fight and maybe Joe gets the better of him in the rematch and then, they get back out into the real world and, start pursuing actual boxing careers and, maybe face up way, way down the road. But yeah, for right now, Joe has been knocked out once more, this time by Dangpei, apparently very violent because everyone heard it in the courtyard. And I'm guessing this episode is going to be a lot about training, figuring out what happened to Joe, what he got hit with, and then learning how to deal with that. But yeah, it should be another really good one, and honestly, I just want to get right to it. But before we begin, as always, remember to blank, blank, and blank. It's still very much a small channel, so every like, comment, share, subscribe that we can get really helps out. I really appreciate it. Patreon link down below. With that, let's get right to it. バッグに顔めがけ叩け叩け叩けだけどルルルル明日はきっと何明日はどっちだああそう責めるなって奴を殴ったのはそれだけの理由があるんだよ。だけどいくらボクシング教えるったってあれはひどいわよ。奴の肉と骨のきみで覚えないといけねえんだよ。Okay, so he purposefully let himself get hit, but countered Joe at the same time, so it was a clash of punches. Oh, stand in the ring of destiny. Well, he's back up at least. Oh shit. Oh shit. He wanted to practice the punch. That sucks that he did that to the friend, though.
あんまり俺に近づくと噛みつくぞ。
こいつ毒棒入りだ。来い。ほら。あいつ矢吹だ。
なーに、下の連中とちょっとボクシングの練習をしてくれ。
おいしかったよ。
Holy shit.
やった。矢吹。
なんでこんな2階から飛べるくらいへでもねえやい。あわよ。
捕まえた者は3日間の特別休暇を与える。捕まえろ。よし。やろ待て。
He's getting training his way. That's the counter.
情のやつえらいパンチを身につけたもんやで。
全員無事のめされました。
Yep, he did it to all of them.
やっと追いついて殴りかかろうとした途端急に振り向きやがって。おい矢吹。
Oh shit.
助けてくれ。
もう少し待ってください。今あいつをぶちのめしたんじゃ日曜日のボクシング大会の楽しみがなくなりますんでね。
1号2号の被害者はどうにか返事ができたんだろうね。この辺になるともう返事どころか白目を向いて気絶してるんですから。
He perfected the punch.
なあ力士、聞いてくれや。俺はたった今が試合の日だったらどんなに楽しいかと思ったとこだぜ。
こいつどんなパンチを身につけたんだ。確かあの時あのコーチの親父柱を背に立っていた。矢吹のやつはそのコーチのパンチを浴びてそこに伸びてやがる。あの親父もまた血ヘドを吐いて倒れてたっけな。ここに何かがある。これは分かったぞ。奴が掴んだというパンチが。
Ah, shit.
あのコーチの親父め。
Is he literally gonna train with bulls?
兄さん危ないですよ。逃げろ。
どうだい、陰口ばっかり叩いてねえで一丁俺と練習しないかい。もうちょっとマシな面に仕上げてやるぜ。
力士のやつ明日の試合に備えてなんとも空恐ろしい練習をやりよったんや。牛をぶっ倒しよったんや。
牛？
ちゃんところに連れてくんで。おいみんなどけ。
He knocked out a bull? Holy shit.
なんでも一発のパンチで倒したっちゅうじゃねえか。
そうよ、あんなパンチ人間が食らったんじゃひとたまりもね
よう、矢吹。お前のその空元気も今日限りだぜ。明日、お前を本当にぶっ殺しちまうんじゃねえかという心配さ。
I think Joe needs Dangpei's help, otherwise he's gonna be in serious trouble.
闘志満々といったところですよ。
これじゃ矢吹のやつどんなにあがいたって歯が立つね
おいどうした。えらく元気がないな。
おっちゃん、明日のためにその3とかいうパンチはどれくらいの威力があるんだい。
やったか。でかしたぞ。あいつがあれは怖いもんなしだ。古くはなってるがな。お前のデビュー戦にはぜひこのグローブと心に決めついたんだ。どうで、試合のたびにこいつが血で真っ赤に染まったもんだ。こいつを嗅いでるとな、今でも自分の血が騒ぎ出すのが手に取るようにわかるんだ。元気出せ。一体どうしまったって言うんだ。
まあこれでもかぶってせいぜい頑張んな。もっともおめが力士さんにぶっ殺されるってことには変わりねえけどよ。
Yeah, kinda thought that was gonna happen.
じゃあおっちゃん、このボログローブちょっと借りるぜ。
ああいいとも。
やつをボロボロのビリビリののしいかにして軽く吹っ飛ばしてくるからな。待ってな。
うわ
ひでえ格好だな。あれでボクシングがあるんだってよ。
こっちはもうとっくに万全の体制ができてるんだからな。
さあかかってこい。間違いねえ。お前には生まれながらにボクシングをやるための血が、獣の血が流れてるんだ。行けジョー。そして命の限り戦えジョー。
昨日はぐれた狼が
立つんだジョー。
立たなきゃ昨日に逆戻り。
Okay, took some time just to gather my thoughts. Another really good episode. So things start off with, Joe in the hospital bed. Nishi's by his side, of course. And Joe has just been in his own head for days thinking about that punch that Dangpei hit him with. And according to Dangpei, that punch is the key to victory over Rikishi. And Joe had to feel the punch himself to fully understand, what it's capable of. From what I can tell, it seems like just a collision. Two guys are punching each other at the exact same time, and because one fighter has a little bit better reach or just connects first, that's enough to, double the impact and do a lot of damage. Put Joe out for multiple days, and then he was just awestruck by it, thinking about it for, 3 days too. He didn't get a lot of time to train for the actual fight. But, to Rikishi's credit, he's not stupid. He reanalyzed what had happened when Dangpei hit him. Just based on the little bit of information that he saw, came running towards, the noise after, Joe screamed out and then collapsed. Dangpei was bloody from the punch he took from Joe, but also Joe's knuckles were bloody from, the impact. So Rikishi figured, there's only so many possibilities from here. It's some type of counter, and, basically just leaned in with all of his weight as Joe was coming forward, and, that's the type of punch that he has to look out for in their fight. So Rikishi uses his time quite wisely and, comes up with this method. I don't know what punch he used against the Bulls, but whatever it is, it's devastating. A grown man knocking a bull unconscious should be, basically impossible, but strange feats of strength occur throughout the show that should technically be impossible, but, we're dealing with a little bit beyond human limit here. At least when it comes to Joe and Rikishi thus far, I'm guessing he's going to encounter, other fighters with some freakish ability, so, yeah, we have more to look out for on the horizon. The news of Rikishi, knocking out bulls is not something Joe can just shake off. It, rocks him to his core. Even when Dangpei and the kids show up to, cheer Joe on and he gives him his gloves, he can see that, Joe's a little bit dejected. He dismisses it as, first fight jitters, just a little bit nervous going into a big fight. But yeah, it's a lot more than that, honestly, and I think Dangpei is going to get one-on-one acquainted with what Rikishi is capable of, and I think he's, a very serious threat to Joe. In fact, going into the fight, I think Rikishi has the advantage, but if Joe can, find it in himself to take some advice from Dangpei in the moment, that might be the key to victory for him. And Rikishi has flat out said, I'm going to take care of this guy, once and for all. So he figures that this punch is going to kill Joe outright. Boxing is a very dangerous sport, and back in the day, like, I don't know quite the time period around here. I think it's, post-World War II, maybe a decade or two beyond that. We might be in 1970. We might be a little bit, further back than that. But if it's 1970s boxing, it's still at a time where it's, quite brutal, especially in Japan. I don't think they adopted WBC rules for, like, decades later. It took until the 80s or 90s. And this is also, a prison setting, so they're not exactly going by strict rules. I didn't see a referee or anything like that. They might even just let them fight until, one of them drops. That could honestly be the situation here. But yeah, this fight should be excellent, and, I just look forward to it, and I want to watch it right now. That's pretty much all I got, so as always, thanks for watching, and peace.